Good night, and welcome to Mindful Live 475. I'm your co-host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is presently 10:04 p.m. on the 17th of the 3rd month. And Trinidad and Tobago is in an interesting place. I'm streaming live from the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, paradise on earth, where some say God himself has his residence located here. Maybe in Central, because we're better than Central to live, eh? All right. So we're here. Good night, DJ Stevie. All right, Stevie or Steamy. Good night. Once you're on the inside, make sure you hit that like button, double tap the screen out there on TikTok. That's how you hit the like button over there. Please do. It really helps for the algorithm. You're looking at this live on YouTube or even on repeat on YouTube. Hit that like button also. Drop a comment. Tell me something. It really helps the algorithm. Comments help a whole lot. Likes also help. What would really help is if you share it to somebody. Tell somebody, hey, listen to this. This is some good stuff. Feel free to do just that. If you are not yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe. All you over on TikTok could run over to YouTube at some point in time and find Nathan Springer out there and subscribe. What's the topic? Well, we're starting off talking about our new Prime Minister. Abdul Hakam is writing lies inside of my chat, speaking about the East-West corridor being the best place to live. No, sir. To pay top dollar and get a short lot, not even a 50 by 100, they want to give you some kind of 30 by 70 or something like that on that East-West corridor. Really? That's what I want? I have to live my life in burglar proof all day, every day, right through, so? Right through my whole life in burglar proof? As soon as I drive out of my home street, I go in on this traffic nightmare where maxis are trained in stupidity. Maxi drivers learn to drive from the wickedest people on earth. There must be one of them imps himself teaching maxi drivers how to be annoying on that Eastern Main Road. We have full lots in the West Compiti Valley. I'm not going quite Pity Valley, brother. I'm not going quite Pity Valley. How are coming out in the morning? They go in the morning? No thanks. No thanks. I mean, I understand if I'm coming from Central and have to go tongue is about the same, but nah. Talking about traffic living in Central is crazy. Listen. Central has traffic at specific times in specific places. If you are a true Centralian, you know how to avoid that. Now, if you want to go by the roundabout near Price Plaza, ma'am, sir, nobody send you there. Everybody knows cars don't really move there. They just slowly roll around the roundabout and trickle their way to wherever they must go. But there are so many through roads. If everything wasn't in Port of Spain, I could have ducked all the traffic in the country. You know how many ways I could get out of Central? You know how many different routes there are in this beautiful place? Either way, anyway. We're talking about all of us having a new Prime Minister here in Trinidad and Tobago. Fresh new Prime Minister. Dr. Rowley is gone. Well, I mean, not gone, but he isn't in that position anymore. Trinidad is the land of back roads. Yep. Price Plaza is for in the night or Sundays. Yeah. You have to know what you're doing with the Price Plaza. Price Plaza, you know. Respect Price Plaza. Don't just run up and feel you're going to wake up now and go down Price Plaza. You might reach tomorrow. Know your timings. But let's hear what Dr. Rowley had to say in some of his closing remarks here. Kamala, a clear and present danger to TNT. In his closing address to his PNM faithful, he had to address scams. Our opposition leader. Opposition leader and her cabal pose a clear and present danger to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Outgoing Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said yesterday as he addressed the PNM Special Convention at City Hall, Port of Spain. It was the last time Rowley was addressing a PNM convention in his capacity as Prime Minister. Rowley was speaking following the presentation of the PNM's 41 candidates to the convention. Rowley warned that a Posad-Bisasa election victory would endanger Trinidad and Tobago's relationship with Venezuela, with whom this country shares vital cross-border assets and would therefore threaten national interests. We live off oil, we live off gas, we are running out of both, and this government that I led did what none had done before. Rowley was saying, open the doors in Venezuela. We got agreements with Venezuela, signed contracts with Venezuela, but the opposition leader is relentlessly attacking and slandering the president of Venezuela. So suppose you put God out your thoughts and election night they win the election and she's the prime minister. Who's she going to talk to down in Venezuela? You all understand what's going on? When the aspirant Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is going on a political platform and calling the president of Venezuela a narco trafficker, suppose they, the UNC, win the election. Everything that we have done with Venezuela would be up in the air, he said. Greetings in the name of the Imperial Majesty. Love and guidance to all scenes. Word, King. Hold it down. Bless. To be fair, he totally lied. She did make a statement. Tallest, he is right. I think he is right. Personally, I am not a fan of leftists and socialist governments. I'm not a fan of dictators. I think from the information I can read and ascertain, and I've spoken to some Venezuelans purely on an informational kind of basis. And from what I can gather, it seems like Maduro and crew are indeed a group of bad hombres. They are some mal hombres. They do not have good interests in their design. I don't know where Ronnie is, sir or ma'am. But even be that as it may, those are the leaders that are there right now. You see, global politics is a unique kind of thing. Global politics is a unique kind of thing where you as a leader of a country, you aren't called to judge the leadership and running of other countries really and truly. That's not our place and position. You run your country and design agreements and relationships with other countries as they come to you. We can't make Venezuela change their leadership. So we have to deal with the Venezuelan leadership that exists. And if indeed our opposition wins, she has had some very harsh words with Venezuela. And I think she's going along with the American MAGA line, the American Trump line. But Trump is a guy, the example I enjoy bringing up is he called Ted Cruz lying Ted. Then when he won and he wanted him as his friend, he called him Lion Ted. Little Marco was a name he had for Marco Rubio when he ran against him and didn't have all good things to say, but Marco is his Secretary of State now. The guy in his design of negotiation, he will say vicious things because he's attempting to squeeze people into certain corners in that, and that's how he does his negotiation. That's because he has cards to play as the president of the United States. They have a nuclear arsenal. They have all of the carriers out there. They have the F-35s. You know, they have unknown weapons. They have what's clearly seen as the strongest military in the world. So when he gives that kind of gondolier talk, you could give gun talk when you have guns. So Maduro, even regardless of what Mr. Trump says about Maduro, at the end of the day, Maduro will make agreements if he can. They have the cards. But if we join in and tag along and CC our names to all of the comments made by the US towards Venezuela, do we have the cards to play like the US? Do we? Currently, the United States government has called TRINIDAD, Aragua, one of the major Venezuelan gangs. They have listed them as a foreign terrorist organization. And now they're using some unique law to kick them out, saying they are an enemy alien basically conducting an invasion on their country. And they're sending them out to El Salvador in prison. And they are using that law on the basis that they say the Venezuelan government is working along with that gang to attempt to invade their country. Now, some say that's an exaggeration by the US to attempt to get to use this special law that they want to use to kick the people out. If that's so, that's so. But if that's true, let's just say that's true, that the Venezuelan government has a proxy cartel, a proxy gang that they're willing to use to carry out their means. And they're willing enough to send them into the United States, where obviously there would be serious consequences for such actions. You think they would be shy about sending them to Trinidad and Tobago if that is the case? Nathan, that's an exaggeration. They have been saying the same thing about Iran. I said that. I said, yes, many claim that it's an exaggeration to attempt to get the guys out. But I don't know. I think similar to the Cuba situation as we were arguing last week, I think it might actually be a convenient truth. Many of these illegitimate regimes do trade in illegal hardware and illegal drugs because that's how they make their money. North Korea is known for their hacking and stealing crypto. They are also known as drug traffickers because when you are under embargo and sanction, you can't move things legally, so you move them illegally. So I wouldn't doubt that. Also, I wouldn't doubt it might be an exaggeration, but I wouldn't doubt that it might be true because these things are very commonplace. These things happen regularly. I mean, the United States would know about that. They have used criminal gangs and cartels to accomplish their means already. And there has been proof where TRINIDAD Aragua has been implicated in murdering or killing of Maduro opponents in and out of Venezuela. So, I'm not doubting it could be an exaggeration, but I'm not doubting that it could very well be true. And if it is true, and we position ourselves as an enemy of that group, what would be our portion? Because if it is that Venezuela is willing to use insurgency type unrecognized, unacknowledged groups to do their dirty deeds, it's not like we could launch an official complaint. To me, I've said that, to me it doesn't make sense. No, it's not strange at all, Abdul. And I know you know why it's not strange. We all know why it's not, well, we may not all know, but we know why it's not strange. Many people pointed that out. They raided Afghanistan while the majority of the hijackers were not from Afghanistan. the alleged hijackers. Let's even put that in there, because who knows what really went on that day. I could tell you I don't know. And it seems like some of them who say they know don't know either. He said, and Rowley, this is Rowley we were speaking about, he said the UNC was telling the population that everything with Venezuela was up in the air because of what was happening in Washington. If you don't understand it, you cannot manage it and you cannot fix it. The most you can do is damage it, and Kamala Persad-Bissessar and her cabal of whoever they are pose a clear and present danger to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Rowley said. Kamala trying to stoke racial strife. Rowley said, I see the leader of the opposition intervening on your behalf to protect you from a political leader who is abusing your constitution and saying she going to court. When you see that mad hatter, tell her before she go to court, pay the money they owe us from the last time they went to court for the election petitions. They went to court over the election results, they lost in the High Court, they lost in the appeal court, and up to this day, the PNM cannot collect its costs. But coming and talking stupidness now about going to court because instead of dealing with her ragtag army of never-do-well, she's concerned about Stuart Young becoming prime minister. And of course, trying to stir up racial hatred about who is of which race and who is of the other race. But Dr. Williams wrote it down there for us. We are not a party in the odd sense of the ordinary sense of the word, but in fact we represent all colors, races, and classes in the common cause of Trinidad, he said. I don't think Miss Persad-Bissessar is running the right strategy right now. Mrs. Persad-Bissessar is running the right strategy right now. I don't think geopolitical war of words with Venezuela is a good idea. If you're having a war of words with Venezuela, to me, it can't just be based on Venezuela's moral failures, that they're a dictatorship and a narco state. No. To me, in geopolitics, you have a problem with a country, it's based on what that country does to you or your people. It doesn't make sense to me, this is to me, from my understanding of sensible geopolitics, for me to go and look over at Lesotho and say Lesotho has an evil leadership and we need to call them out for the reprehensible things they have. To me, that's not my business, unless it's being done to me or my people. That's not a government's job. If they do, I think they might have a chance. If they change leaders, well, the thing is, barring some kind of real dramatic something, it's pretty much impossible for them to change leaders now. It's basically locked in as it is, and it will be that way till the general election, barring some black swan event or something like that. So I don't think they can change even if they want to. I don't think they can. Rowley slams visa ragamuffins. In his final last hours as Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley yesterday blasted the United Kingdom over its decision to impose visa restrictions on Trinidad and Tobago nationals and called on this country to get the hell out of the Privy Council. He said these visas were required even when seeking access to this country's final court of appeal, the Privy Council, which is located in London. He called on the British government to review its unfair, unjust, and disgraceful decision. Do you really feel independent when your highest court is in a foreign country and the foreign country's leaders would put visa arrangements by which you could come to that country? Either your lawyers have to provide proof that you are so and so, or they turn down your visa request, and that is your highest access to legal support as a nation. Well, if you all didn't know that, we should get out of the Privy Council and get to the Caribbean Court of Justice. But here's a question to me. if you're saying we don't want the country's highest court in a foreign nation, shouldn't we want a Trinidad Supreme Court then? Good night, Joy. Would the Caribbean Court of Justice, well, I believe they are headquartered in Trinidad, which is strange, seeing as we are not part of it really and truly, but be that as it may, isn't the Caribbean Court of Justice not exclusively Trinidadian also? Isn't that having influence from a foreign nation also? Won't we have judges from other countries in the Caribbean deciding our fates as well? Like, I mean, okay, we cure the visa problem, but if the issue is a foreign court deciding our legal matters, shouldn't we look for an internal? And you see, I actually have some interest in an internal Supreme Court. There's a lot of risk, but I think there is potential for reward because a Supreme Court locally is how Nayib Bukele in El Salvador was able to do what he was able to do and bring their country from thousands of murders per year to double digits. Yes, you heard right. That's the kind of change El Salvador has been having. So well their prison system apparently runs that the US is now paying them to hold some of their high-risk foreign prisoners. Here's a question I wonder. Can Trinidad get in on that deal? Here's an idea. Here's an idea, people. We're struggling to hold our gangsters in our jails because they're running their gangs from behind the prison walls. If El Salvador has an efficient prison management system and the money to pay them to hold a prisoner is comparable to keep the prisoner here, hear me out. Send the high-profile gangsters. What's it, Seacut or something like that they name it? Send them on a vacation to Latin America. Pleasant good evening, Mr. J. Chris. Isn't that an idea? Wouldn't that work? That has potential to backfire on El Salvador. Of course it does. I mean, yes, it does. Yes, of course it does. And El Salvador could find themselves in all kind of tricky positions because jail sentences generally last longer than political terms. So who knows what may happen when another person comes into power in the next 4 years, how that deal may all shape up, and who knows what would happen if El Salvador has a change of leadership. What happens if that prison system becomes less efficient at running? Who knows what's going to happen? So yes, that could backfire on El Salvador, but it could also reward them very healthily. And who knows, that could form a global change. Why can't there be a global prisoner tourism system per se? I consider, because modern days we're falling into a problem where we can't put people into exile anymore. We have to imprison them in our land. This opens up that opportunity to get people out. Yes, that's what I mean. We have run out of the general ability to put people in exile, but now this may provide that opportunity. And to me, it wouldn't be for the regular people. If you all are calling the gangsters terrorists now, Hey, Ronnie, somebody was asking for you earlier. I think it's the person who just joined user with plenty numbers. Next, we taking organs. Why not? Why not? Why not? If you murder somebody's son and then somebody need a liver, why they can't take it from you? Isn't that restorative justice? Maybe their son would have donated the kidney, their son may have donated the liver. They don't have a son anymore, so it's your fault. Isn't the statement in the older context of morality an eye for an eye? So a body for a body. Like, how could we be okay with killing them, hanging them high, electrocuting them, injecting them with poison and watching them flail to death, but a kidney is a step too far? Like, come on, bro. This isn't even me necessarily endorsing this, but it's putting the argument forward. Like, I was hearing somebody saying that due process is very important, is the most important, even if it helps bad people. And I'm saying, I think helping good people comes in front of due process. I think due process was created to help good people. So if it isn't helping good people, we throw out the due process and return to just helping good people. The helping people live a peaceable life is more important than the due process. And Nayib Bukele recognized that. He recognized that, where if you had a tattoo and you had proof of you being in a gang, forget all of this thing where we have to make sure we could get irrefutable evidence that could stand up to weirdos who disagree in a jury. No, forget that. You're in a gang, go to jail. Do not collect $200, do not pass, go. Do you believe that family members should pay part costs to house their family who is in prison? According, I believe in El Salvador, they also have a contingency where if you are housing a gangster, you go to prison too. And that's the way I see it. If you are in good terms with a known criminal in your family, pay. This is how we solve these things. It's a societal issue, so let the wider society that endorses it pay. And that's how you get it down. If a mother is training bandit sons and you arrest one, you arrest two, all of them come from the same residence and mommy's still there cooking for them every day. None of them works a place. I think mommy is a criminal too. And if you really want to tackle that, to me, that's how you do it. You have to actually be serious about it. But the truth is, as Trinidad stands right now, our highest court would not allow those moves. I listening good and then we saying Sharia is uncivilized. It's according to your definition of civilized, I guess. In a perfect Trinidad, that would be great. But that's why I was saying, if we could outsource some of that, the corruption behind the prison walls, I think, is facilitating a lot of the criminality. We could get rid of that. And as for the Sharia example, not all parts of Sharia I have a problem with. I think there are some very useful parts of that. And I am not someone fully sold on the bureaucratic judicial system. I am of the view that the bureaucracy should be shrunk. We have way too large of a bureaucratic system. And I am also of the view that it's basically impossible to legislate morality in the first place. So it's kind of a cultural issue. And cultures, they fester in clans, they fester in tribes, they fester in groups. So if you are in a group with a festering antisocial culture, then that entire group maybe needs to be plucked out. Just build our own gang prisons, Abdul Hakam says. Well, Abdul, I think in order to do that, that's the problem I was identifying with the Privy Council. Because the kind of requirements for the kind of gang prison that they have out there, I don't think we would be able to get that legally done in Trinidad and Tobago under our present framework. I mean, we already have Carrera. Carrera is already out there. You can outfit Carrera to be an extremely high security, maximum security prison that no one could get information in and out of, and all of that and all of that and all of that. But the moment someone doesn't get their call or doesn't get their this or doesn't get their that, they're calling Freedom Chambers and launching a lawsuit. And that lawsuit is going to go to the Privy Council. Bear in mind that same Privy Council, those same law lords in the United Kingdom have laws so weak and foolish. We have gangsters alleged from Trinidad running away there, magically telling them that they are refugees now, and they, because of their foolish laws, have to take their word for it. And all that they could do is cancel Trinidad's free visa, or visa-free entry. They can't look at the criminal sitting in their country, eating their food for free, staying in their hotels for free, and going through their legal system, racking up costs to them. They can't watch them and say, boy, go home because he's a criminal. They can't do that because of their legally contrived system. They want to be so caring that they have been foolish. So, that's the top of our system. The caring to list stupid people up in the European legal framework. They caught the Trump sickness. What's the Trump sickness? Because they didn't catch the Trump sickness. I could tell you if they caught the Trump sickness, all 800, is it, of those Trinis requesting refugee asylum would have been on a flight back already. So I don't think they caught the Trump sickness. If they caught the Trump sickness, big boy from certain location that has certain allegations on his name may have been one of those with the head. I don't know if you see the video of them going into the El Salvador prison, all the head ducked down, so all of them in white. Big boy may have been like that if the United Kingdom caught that Trump sickness. I want to believe Trump played a part in that visa issue. I don't know. I think we played a part in that visa issue. But last year, when they charging states for not taking in people seeking asylum, last year wasn't Trump. Last year was a different guy in charge. So there's a different guy in charge now, and he's looking probably to charge states for taking in asylum. That's true, Abdul. That's true. Dr. Rowley basically said the same thing, that the problem in the UK, to a large extent, is because of their own doing. Their own doing has created a system whereby they reward people for lying about asylum and going to them and appealing to be refugees. They reward people for that. And this is the problem that Trumpy boy was speaking about during his campaign. If you tell people, when you get to my country, all you have to do is say you're seeking asylum, and then they have a case set for 5 years in the future, and they get to live free for the time being. Isn't that an open invite to everyone? And that's basically what was going on. It was an open invite. It's not a coincidence. We had guys from Trinidad fleeing, running all about calling themselves refugees. That's not a surprise, because there was an open invite given by the previous administration out of the United States. And Europe, to some extent, had some of that going too. In my book, though, I don't think the United Kingdom was necessarily wrong. Yeah, Abdul, you should have. I don't think the United Kingdom was necessarily wrong in their decision. And Dr. Rowley said it here, but I believe that it was up to Trinidad and Tobago to get into the negotiation with the United Kingdom over this. A problem might be that they didn't warn Trinidad, or at least the Trinidad officials, that this was the next step, which I think is on the United Kingdom. I think if indeed we are partners, as they like to claim, that an open line of communication would make sense. You don't ban the country before you inform those in authority, and maybe it's something that could be rectified. So I would say that a discussion should have been had, like I was making the point previously. We are currently in an SOE. They are giving these state of emergency holding orders on people they consider to be high priority offenders. Isn't it possible for us to have coming to some kind of discussion with the United Kingdom, send one of these detention orders out to the United Kingdom, use that as means for deportation, and get them to send them back? Isn't that possible? Concord Road says, I think Trump doesn't like how some countries in the Caribbean are selling citizenship, and the citizenship allows them to need to us visa. I believe Amory Brown said no communication took place prior. Yes, I believe he said so. And on the High Commission, I think that's a negative. I think that's a negative. I believe if you are partners, you get into a discussion before you make this public. It's not something that you make public in the news before you discuss it with your friends. Your friends shouldn't hear about that in the news, if indeed they are your friends. Well, that's a normal thing, and by and large, to the people who could afford to buy citizenship and stuff, they may have been able to access a US visa anyway, just by the way. So I don't know if that's where a lot of the problem is. Now let's look at Stewie's changes. Changes to 5 key cabinet posts. Young's A-team. Prime Minister Stuart Young and Attorney General Camille Robinson Regis were sworn in to form the basic core of a cabinet, and hours later 27 other ministers also took oaths of office, administered by President Christine Kangaloo at President's House on March 17th. Young retains his role as Energy Minister. Former Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez becomes new Minister of National Security, replacing Fitzgerald Hines, who becomes a minister in the office of the Prime Minister. That seems like a significant demotion. Minister in the office of the Prime Minister is an assistant, not so? Former Permanent Secretary and Diplomat Vishnu Danpal is the new finance minister replacing Colm Imbert, who became public utilities minister. Adrian Leance joins cabinet as housing minister, replacing Robinson Regis, with whom he had worked closely as a former junior minister. Here's the thing though, like for the finance minister, I don't think he is going to have a budget reading. This is an election cabinet. What role is that finance minister really going to have in this small time? Oh gosh, move the man before you finish with Wassa. You mean to finish with them in a good way or a bad way? You will have a mid-year review. Oh yes, you will. I wonder how many of this cabinet, I know he was, but I wanted to know if you considered that a bad thing or a good thing. I wonder how much of this cabinet, how many of these members of this cabinet would make it if Stuart wins the next election. I wonder how many of them he would retain if he wins the next election. How many of them he would keep. Because I wouldn't doubt some of those he's keeping around there is because he's afraid to stir the pot too much before the election. Imbert to only need to go and rest. I agree. That's why I said the moves on Imbert and Hines, I think, are some smart moves. As far as popularity and approval go, I think they have the lowest. Hines and Imbert together. People do not like Mr. Hines. I do not know who would be his support team. And similarly for Mr. Imbert. Hines is a minister in the office of the Prime Minister. Quite a demotion. And as far as effective seeming and popular ministers go, I think Mr. Gonzalez has been, if not the most, one of them up there, seen as one of the more effective ministers. Better they did call him a parliamentary secretary. Yeah, I think Mr. Marvin Gonzalez is one of the more popular and seen as effective action ministers. It seems like he is doing work inside, or he was doing work inside of the Public Utilities Ministry. So, we'll see how it goes inside of the Ministry of National Security. And Mr. Imbert, I don't think he's very popular either. Now, I don't know how much effect he directly had on each reading of the budget, whether how many of the plans came directly from him, but just his interaction with people has left quite a bit to be desired. So moving him, I think, was a good thing. And generally speaking, if this guy was a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, he would very likely be someone who is a technocrat in the financial sector. Someone who has been trained and knowledgeable in these affairs. So he may be well qualified for the role. I do not know the guy though. We'll see. Imbert should have been a secretary as well. But I think with Imbert there's a little more there. Because I think Mr. Hines is more obviously on the way out than Mr. Imbert. Because Mr. Imbert is at least going to spend probably what, this year in Parliament at least, and he's set up to spend the next 5 years because he's going up for his seat again, not so? And if he's going up for his seat again, the chances are he's going to win because it's a PNM safe seat. it's a safe seat. So Mr. Imbert isn't out of it. Minister of Digital Transformation Hazel Bacchus, or is it Hazel, retains a portfolio but also becomes a junior minister in the finance ministry alongside Brian Manning. And I do not know what Tanti Hazel has been doing for the last how much ever years this Ministry of Digital Transformation has been here. What has that ministry done? Hines a no-show at event. National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines, one of PNM's longest-serving members, was noticeably absent from the party's presentation of all 41 candidates yesterday at Woodford Square in Port of Spain. The event was also a farewell to outgoing Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley as he delivered his final address as Prime Minister. While Hines announced last November that he would no longer be offering himself for representative politics after 30 years, his absence did not go unnoticed as the nation braces for a significant leadership transition, with Stuart Young set to be sworn in as Prime Minister. Well, that was before he was already sworn in. And, you know, I think here, we're seeing the chess game of Dr. Rowley. And I've said this before. I don't want to assume how much he cares for the nation. He can say that. But I think Dr. Rowley had a primary focus on the well-being of his party. I wouldn't doubt that he probably had his eyes on Xing out Mr. Hines. But a long-serving party loyalist, you don't just kick out unceremoniously. So you have him announce his resignation way before even the changing of the guard with the Prime Minister business goes on. Mr. Hines has been out of the public eye now for like 4 months, basically. So, even if Hines was vexed, he had 4 months to be vexed before this whole thing actually came to fruition. Or is that 6 months? 5 months. No one could say, but how Stewie go sideline Hines, boy? Because Hines has already been sidelined. I think Dr. Rowley did kind of as good as he could do for party politics. It was more about the protection of his name than a demotion. Whose name, Mr. Hines? Never in a million years will a UNC transition be that smooth in the public eye. I don't think so either. You have to give PNM credit. They are quite an institution. They have their bureaucracy on point. And to me, that's kind of the problem with PNM in and of itself. They may be too bureaucratic and too well-oiled in that bureaucratic sense. That's why things I've said is that's why if the PNM has to do stealing, they do stealing so well within the legal framework that it becomes hard to finger them in it, because they have a well-lined bureaucratic system. that man that is getting the money has been properly hired, and he opened an NGO and he went through the correct lines to get his tender in, and it went through the permanent secretary, and it was a back note from the minister to the permanent secretary that is not on the record, but it's not illegal either, and that's how they do it. While poor UNC, because they didn't have all this time to get calcified inside the system, if they have to thief some money, they have to get a crocker's bag, fold the crocker's bag and throw it in a backseat and go their way. Bear in mind, that is, you all need, some of you who forget, you all need to go back to 2010 to 2015 and take a refresher on some of the bacchanal that used to pass back then. Just note, by the way. So, not saying that necessarily makes PNM a better group to run the country necessarily, but it definitely shows that they have that institutional prowess. And you can give Dr. Rowley that credit. Even Mr. Manning didn't have a smooth turnover like Dr. Rowley did. Daniel, You read some of those rulings and judgments and the evidence that's there. Like some of those cases that have been filed. Read the case and the evidence presented. Read the case and the evidence presented. Some of them are like, whew. Because Dr. Rowley self is who throws spoke in Manning wheel. Yes, that's true. That's true. When it comes down to it, people always look at some sense of stability from a party. That happens when you play golf. National Security welcomes Gonzalez, thanks Hines for service. Marvin Gonzalez has been welcomed as the new Minister of National Security. The Ministry of National Security extends its heartfelt congratulations to Minister Gonzalez, the statement read. PNM and UNC do same thing. PNM and UNC do same thing in what? And that's a statement I dislike. I dislike that statement, Kwesi Andrews, because it's not true. I don't like the people that say all parties are the same. People on the group happy when UNC in power because when they thief, people outside the system eats. Yeah, I've said this before, I don't deny this, that to me, business is easier done under the UNC because bureaucratic systems kill and stifle ease of doing business. I think the UNC creates an atmosphere where it's easier for the economy to flow, for the market to flow. Now, that may be to facilitate easy movement of money in all directions, but it makes money move easier. Stealing, Kwesi says. Well, I wouldn't even say that, because as I said, even the allegations of theft between the two parties are not the same. The type of theft from the two parties are not the same. So you could even decide a difference in how they steal. I don't like the all parties are the same, all politicians are the same arguments, because I think it's a coward's cop-out. And I actually think many people who say things like that don't actually believe that. And they may have a favored one, they may have someone they think is better or at least different. It's idiotic to me, it's asinine to say that the UNC and the PNM are the same party. They are not. They are not. They don't function the same. They don't do the same thing. Where is 2.6 billion? Kwesi, do you read the news? And me saying they're not the same is not an endorsement of one or the other. It's just saying they are not the same. I could understand why someone or how someone could make the decision to choose PNM over the UNC because there are differences. Similarly, I could understand why someone could make the decision to choose UNC over PNM because there are differences. And those differences may be beneficial or seem beneficial to one person or the other. Kwesi, if you're asking about the 2.6 billion, just by the way, you aren't reading the news. Because no evidence as it stands right now, even the what's a title again? The Auditor General is not alleging that the money is missing or stolen. Like, when people bring up this 2.6 billion question, it tells me where they get a lot of their information, because it's unfinished information. The Auditor General isn't alleging a missing 2.6 billion. The Privy Council law lords that ruled against Mr. Imbert did not suspect a missing 2.6 billion. The allegation is that an error was made in the writing up, and in trying to hide that the error was made, they tried to bully the Auditor General to rectify it before it went out, while they would have had to rectify it earlier for her to make that change. That is where the issue is. Whether they had the legal right to bully the Auditor General to make the change on their beck and call. That is where the issue is. The Auditor General is not alleging the PNM thief $2.6 billion. And it's the same thing like with the Petrotrin arguments that I said when I made that video. Like, the starting point of where people bring up these issues tells me a lot. If you start at the 2.6 billion, it tells me your brain is captured. If you start at, they should have keep Petrotrin open, look how we had a buy oil now, then it tells me your brain is captured. Because that's not where the argument starts. You have to start this by, if you're arguing for Petrotrin, you have to start by arguing how we would have turned Petrotrin from red to black. Okay, they may have been making a profit if you excluded the loans they owed on. So are you saying that we should have, as a country, paid out the loans and then left Petrotrin to make a profit? That's your argument. Then come with that argument. You can't just come and say they should have left Petrotrin open, because there was a reason. And you have to confront the reason. Again, if you're talking about the 2.6 billion, talk about the reason. Confront the reason. To me, I agree that the Auditor General maybe did the right thing. Because if there was an understatement, they tell her there was an understatement, but she doesn't have the time to actually go back and check through and find that understatement. So she would have to take their word for it, and she doesn't want to do that with her independent office and put herself in place. Because if they tell her there was an understatement, but really somebody really thieved the $2.6 billion, and she write it as a change in the books, then it goes on her record as she doing the wrong thing. So I don't blame her, and it seems like the Privy Council themselves kind of leaned on her side with that. And there we create, who's going to close down a profitable business? Well, they allege that's what the PNM did, because the PNM is so stupid and the PNM is so wicked. The PNM just didn't like the people down in Central and South that were working in Petrotrin, and the PNM so dumb they didn't understand any of the oil and gas industry. So the PNM so stupid they just closed it down randomly when it was making all the money. Like, that doesn't sound like a sensible argument. Someone asked me how they're going and bring oil from Africa. I asked them where it usually comes from. Because we're selling the refinery to an African company, that doesn't mean the oil has to come from Africa, you know. Is it safe to say PNM already won? I wouldn't say so at all, because politics is a very, 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 very strange game. Strange things happen all the time. But I would say that the UNC isn't setting themselves up for victory. I would say that the UNC keeps shooting themselves in the foot. Keeping a leader that has been rejected numerous times already, bad idea. That leader lambasting your powerful neighbors that are more powerful in military strength than you, and you may want to do business with, I think that's a bad idea. Invoking race, especially as the PNM moves to a non-black man, seems like a very bad idea. The UNC, to me, the UNC's winning lane is crime. That's your winning lane. Crime. Even the economic issues, I think, you aren't really going to convince people on it that easily and readily. Like, I don't know if the UNC would be able to mount a campaign where they could explain to people how they would better run the economy. I'm not sure they could do that. Even if it's true that they could better run the economy, I don't know how good of a campaign that would be. But the crime? Yes, Abdul, they can. And here's the thing. For me, in my pipe dreams, I would wish that Trinidad and Tobago had the discipline and integrity to run our own refinery successfully. I look at countries that are able to do it and I'm nearly envious. And it's strange. Many of the countries that are able to run a public-owned refinery have no oil, like Jamaica or like Singapore. And I think some of it may be because of that resource curse that people talk about, where actually having the resource gives people a sense of entitlement to the benefits of the resource, while not having the resource gives people a sense of responsibility and a weight of responsibility to manage and juggle the difficult scenario they find themselves in. So in the case of Singapore, they couldn't afford to just run their refinery on a bus and pay out any and every carpenter and ground level worker any salary they want and throw oil here, thief oil. They couldn't afford to do that and keep their country running. They didn't have the natural resources to throw around. Abdul says, I support leasing the refinery. Me too, of course. Like, especially as it stands now. I, of course, support leasing the refinery. That's the next thing that some people don't know, Daniel Knights. Some people don't know that the Petrotrin refinery, when it was ours and open, already begun buying oil. You all know that, right? Petrotrin was already buying oil. Tobago is the key, but who will want the UNC? So I guess a third party in Tobago could off balance. What's the third party in Tobago? I don't think the TPP is lining themselves up for success. I just don't think so. There was an article last week where the TPP had a lawsuit to a Tobagonian contractor. While much of their deals go to Trinidadian contractors that the PNM Tobago branch have effectively labeled as UNC contractors. And I think that's something that could have some sway over in Tobago. If it could accurately be painted that the TPP is giving the most lucrative Tobagonian contracts to foreign UNC Trinidadian contractors. And you know, UNC Trinidadian contractors also has a racial component when you're talking Tobago. If that is something that could be sold to the Tobago public, I think it would be bought by the Tobago public, and I think it's a losing message for the TPP. Yes, I saw that, Danielle. I saw they recalled all their candidates and they're back to the drawing table. Good luck. You know, Abdul, if we had a king, all of that would have been done. The difficulty as it stands with all of those things, keep all CL Financial oil tankers and start buying crude from Guyana and refine. That may be a beautiful idea. We are placed for a wonderful trade. We are in place to be one of the most lucrative nations in the world. Guyana and Venezuela together may have the largest store of oil and gas, possibly even in the world when it's all said and done. And we, as an island right off their coast with good deep water ports, good infrastructure, good electricity, we are perfectly positioned for this. What you mean if I want to be a public speaker? I am a public speaker. Why are you spamming that question? Well, Daniel, I don't know how he's going to be gone when it's alleged he may be the actual power broker, even more so than Mr. Ali himself. And with the oil money there, the power broking may just be getting him stronger and stronger and stronger. I don't deny that may be the case, but I don't know if it's possible right now. I joined late. Tell me how you feel about the cabinet changes if you mentioned already. I think they were the best political move that he could make, because I think the two people he moved were the two most unpopular people. The two main people he moved were the two most unpopular people in the cabinet, in the two most unpopular portfolios. And the man he put into the place, Mr. Gonzalez, is as popular as you could get inside of the sitting government. And the next guy being an Indo-Trinidadian with a very Indian sounding name, I think helps to add credence to that more multiracial appeal of this PNM party that they're trying to do there. So in terms of the politics of it, I think it was a better move. Davey says the greatest asset of that refinery was the skilled labor force, which were grabbed up by Qatar. I don't know if that's so. I think skilled labor in a global market is something not that difficult to get, to be honest. Since Morgan Job, we have been hearing all of this on how we can become Singapore. What's stopping it? That's what I was going to complete saying. I think the problem that is stopping this is corruption, is the nature of how our country runs. Part of the resource curse, as they talk about it, the boost in natural resources often lends itself to a trail of corruption in its wake. So we are corrupt. The point I make with Petrotrin, what threw down Petrotrin was massive capital investments on projects, allegedly, that ballooned way more than their budgets were supposed to be. But the truth is, those projects were necessary. They were essential for Petrotrin to become a refinery of the future. Bear in mind, there were laws changing around us, determining the kind of diesel we could sell, the kind of gas we could sell, the quality of the fuel that could be sold. So we had to upgrade our refinery that was nearly 100 years old already, if not over 100 years old. So the projects were necessary and essential. The problem there is that our government, our state, already generally runs ballooned and corrupt projects. And when you have a state that already runs ballooned corrupt projects, and you combine that with a state agency that is also known for ballooned and project and corrupt salaries, you're getting a perfect storm for a nightmare. And okay, this happened under the PNM and the former chairman Malcolm Jones, and they dragged that man's name even past the grave for this. But the point I have made is that some of those projects extended into the UNC's reign in 2010. And what you recognize is the projects weren't brought back under budget under the People's Partnership. In fact, they ballooned even more. Thank you, Royal Trinidad. So the problem wasn't Malcolm Jones and the PNM. The problem was the nature of how our state does projects. And I do not think we could have had a government that would have done massive capital investment projects in Petrotrin in a way that would have been efficient. I just don't think it was possible. For the Caroni 1975 Limited, I believe sugarcane could have been profitable. There are still private farmers out there that still grow sugarcane occasionally. I think you could have gotten a profitable strategy for that company. But it's the nature of our state industries. It wasn't just those at the top. From the top, come right down to the lowest level daily paid contract worker. Everybody was involved in the leeching of the company. And it couldn't continue like that. So, even though we have the potential to end up like Singapore, to me, if a government is trying to do that in Trinidad and Tobago, the way to do that in a country like ours is not to try to do it with the state power. You're trying, to me, if you want to do that, you have to try to facilitate private companies to do it. It's in our DNA, Ronnie said. No, it's not in our DNA. It's incentive structures. It's human nature, and when you incentivize certain things from humans, you get that. So we need an Ilana and Doge, or it's all pointless and we'll always be trapped by corruption. I think we need to get the government out of a lot of what it is in. So yes, in a sense, an Elon and Doge, but all of our parties are designed to enjoy the system that we have. So we need to change the system itself. We don't need all these public servants. And here's the problem. The last man to try to tackle some of these systemic problems, they nearly kill him in a coup. Question: what do you think about degrees and no local jobs? I think, again, this is an issue that our government caused and facilitated that they should not have. It's not the government's job to find you a job. It's not the government's job to find you a job. But when our government gives people the impression that the government has the ability to educate you all the way and then give you a job that gives you a stable income till you die and then gives you pension, the government will take care of you from cradle to grave. This is what you get. I think when people choose a degree, they need to choose a degree looking at their own job prospects, not wondering what job the government is going to give them after. You go into your degree with considerations about your job prospects, or you go into your degree because you just love this information direction and you want to learn about it and you aren't worried about a job anyway, you're going to work somewhere else. But then brain drain. That's why I say the government's job is facilitation. And it's people's job to find the job. The brain drain we get most often is not that people leave Trinidad to go and work for a government somewhere else, you know. People leave Trinidad to go find private enterprises somewhere else to work for, majority of the times in the United States. If we facilitate these private enterprises in Trinidad and Tobago, so when is the merchant class going to wage war on the bureaucracy? It's taking long. I think our merchant class is okay with the bureaucracy because it helps to maintain the status quo. They're okay with the because as it stands, or as it stood, the government took natural resources money, put a lot of it into public servants' hands, and that cash is going to flow into the merchant class hands. So it's not like they had to tax the merchants in order to pay the public servants, and then the public servants put the money in the economy. The money initially came from natural resources. So the worry about a bloated public service isn't as high when it's not your taxes directly necessarily paying for them. But now that the resources aren't what they used to be, and in order to facilitate the kind of largesse that we have, the kind of free-for-all that we've had going on, we have to start to look at where we're going to get the money from. If that's the case, the war on the bureaucracy is going to kick off pretty quick. Good night, HYMC. It's the system. It's the nature of our system. Our system, the way it's set. And that's why, like, I'm against generally just giving out cash to the lower classes or to poor people. Not because I don't want to help poor people, but you have to understand, if you, as a government, if you endorse the government giving $5 million every month to the lower classes in society, what that's actually doing is giving $5 million extra every month to the merchant class, because they're below a certain level in society. Basically, all of their money is consumed. All of their money is used on goods and services. So every cent you give them passes on upward. It doesn't remain with them. And Colin found some of it from taxing the working and poor class, creating independency. Well, they seem to be trying to find a lot of it from the roads. The police on our roads are a money-making scheme, and I despise it. The police attempt to treat our road system as if it's the Autobahn in Germany. To me, the seriousness of road traffic enforcement needs to be balanced with the seriousness of the road traffic system. if you have dirt roads and uncut grass at the side still, then it seems unfair to ban the donkey cart from the road. So in Guyana, they still have donkey carts, etc., still rolling up and down. But if you have a certain quality of road and a certain quality of road system, then it doesn't make sense that you punish people for meeting your quality with their quality of transport. SU is a money-making exercise for the TTPS. In addition, it generates a culture of dependency and a government save us mentality. Yeah, it does. And the government can't save you. They can't. They don't have the ability to. So, who knows? Maybe if you run out of oil and gas, we'll be forced to become more resourceful and it might actually work for our benefit. Who knows? Well, that's the point I'm making, Ruel. If our roads are not up to scratch, then you can't punish people for cars not being up to scratch. That's the level of our society right now. Our society hasn't yet advanced to the point where everybody is driving a perfect car on the road. Many parts of Port we might have to go back to donkey cart. Anyway, people, the non-energy sector seems to be doing pretty well as of late when you look at the CBTT reports. Yes, I like to keep up with the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, and you keep up there, and those guys are doing the thing. Because you see, for them, there's no help. It's a pretty simple thing. I take in my raw material, make sure it costs less than my final product that I sell. That's the simple thing. Simple like that. The most corrupt ministry is works and transport, quite possibly. Who knows, maybe national security too. Alright, people, that's all I have for now tonight. I have to make an early exit tomorrow, so I'm out tonight. That's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, and entertained. This is Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live. I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful Live session, which is going to be tomorrow around that after 9 time. So until then, people, hold it on. Thank you very much, Ruel. Appreciate it. Hold it on, stay well, stay inside. Go and marry somebody nice, little Trini child, and make some good Trini babies. We need some of those to keep the population going. Pension had to pay. Alright, people, later.